Hey YouTube, today is May 8th, Friday. We're going to review the Friday Facts number 346 for Factorio. If you like this sort of thing, make sure you hit that like and subscribe, ring that bell to make sure you get a notification every time I post a new video. If you have a question or a comment, leave it in the comment section below, and all the links and ways to support me and everything else will be posted in the description below. With that, let's get to the FFF. All right, Friday Facts number 346, He Who Does Nothing Breaks Nothing by Posilla and Clonin, our good buddy Clonin. This is Posilla talking first. Here we go. In recent patch notes, there was a fixed landfill spawning under player when the building landfilled elsewhere, and there's a link to it. Some people on the Reddit were wondering how did this bug happen in the first place and asked for the long version. He even suggested we could use it for a Friday Facts, and I thought, yeah, if I'm going to spend the time writing this, I should consider an FFF so someone else doesn't have to spend the time writing something else. Good. That is good. If you throw this down, then and you have to explain something in the forums, maybe you just post about it. There you go. Disclaimer, I've not been around during the ancient parts of this story. Speaking of which, it's my 5-year anniversary at Woob. Wow, there you go. I guess, does Posilla qualify as we were talking about this earlier, who is there from the original cast? I guess 5 years is probably original. It's a 7-year-old game, right? 7? Almost 7? Changes I've been around for or even done myself. I might not remember correctly, so this might not be accurate. In fact, let's just say the story is purely fictional and any resemblance to the real world is just coincidence. 5 years is original enough, I agree. The transitions. The first couple years, Factorio development, Rotter drew a transition ground over lines. The graphics for the transition tiles was taking too much space from the ground tile, so it was not possible to draw a single tile of ground separated by water, nor one tile wide bridge going across through water. In addition to that, the transition graphics was tileable only with grass terrain. To enforce these constraints, the map generator was enhanced by tile correction step, and the purpose of which was to make sure that the terrain is possible to draw without any graphic effects. If you wonder why the game doesn't use the Wang tiles instead, I know they were considered, but why they were not used, I don't know. Based on the original water transition, it looks to me like the thing started with the intention to use them, but they ended up not working with the noise-based map generation. That's just my speculation, though. Let's scroll down just a hair so we can get this picture in. Of course, the tile correction was executed when tiles were changed by means other than the map generator. From script example, mods that allowed players to place tiles immersed, and one of them was landfill, which was adopted into the base game eventually. As far as I remember, the major trigger for that were reports from people who happened to spawn on a large island. After 20 hours of playing the map, they found they could not continue it. Adding landfill to the game solved those issues and created a new one. When placing landfill, the tile correction logic could decide to correct the tiles the player was standing on, trapping the player in the water. I remember waterbore, you could do this. You can waterbore the tile that the player's standing under, and you could kill yourself. But man, I don't remember when landfill was in the game as when I joined. So, and that was I think at the end of 12, maybe somewhere between 12 and 13. I joined. I cannot remember. It's been so long, and I kill all my save games. I don't hang on to any of that. So as far as my universe is, the landfill has always been in the game. There's a bug report from 2016. Placing landfill traps the player. Okay, so the player is standing on legit land, places a landfill, and then is trapped in a transition tile. Right. As the team working on the game grew, it was decided to do another pass on the terrain graphics, but puts more time into it. Change these rounds, you probably already know. Oh, yeah. Look at there. You couldn't go down into that. 13, minor features, added landfill. 13-0. Okay, so I wasn't 12. I was early 13. I do remember this business where there were some places even though it looked like you could walk, you couldn't. I remember this. As you probably already know, since we keep talking about past weeks, the ground draws shore transitions over water tile now, and the shores are not limited to grass terrain anymore. This made tile correction mostly obsolete, but it's still used to enforce some soft tile placement rules during map generation. For example, deep water should not be adjacent to ground tiles. Okay? Right, so you have the dark blue versus the light blue, right? And where were we? Since we were leaving the logic in anyway, the possibility to define new tiles such that they would not be allowed just one tile wide remained also. So again, as you probably remember from 2 weeks ago, the new transition graphics and newly possible one tile wide creeks made it feel like the player is getting stuck on invisible walls, right? Did they do away with shallow water? Yeah, I don't remember seeing shallow water recently. That's a good question. We already had the characters slide around a little bit, entity corners, and the new corner transitions that were usually diagonal made me miss the behavior when colliding with tiles. So I started reworking how the player collided with the tiles and how those collisions got resolved. What I found worked well was to ignore the bounding box of the character and just test the terrain directly at the player's position. If the tile type at that position is walkable, the player doesn't collide. If it is walkable, if it is not walkable, we figure out the shape of the transition and make the character collide only on some parts of the tile. Note, this assumes walkable tile draw transitions over non-walkable ones. So in case you're thinking of creating a mod with new terrain type that a player won't be able to walk on. Oh, in the slash editor. So my goal was to make player movement not be frustrating around water, and intended the rest of the collisions to work as they used to, despite, for example, enemies not being able to walk, not being able to always chase after the player. The map generator didn't create maps on which this would happen often, and I didn't mind players using landfill to create passages that could not be crossed by enemies. So that's the every other stepping stone, right? Yep. It just didn't seem to be worth further fueling this chain reaction solution to previous player problems to create more problems, right? Because changing player collision was not without its own issues either. Have you noticed anything unusual about walls placed next to water? Hint, hint, right. Anyhow, what I wanted to do was to make special collision function for the player, but I soon learned we have several collision functions for different situations, and I didn't want to make special version of each of them. So I decided to add a flag to the character's collision mask that would modify the collision detection method. Naturally, I wanted to make it possible for modders to change the collision mask of the character's entity, so I exposed the flag to prototype definitions. Mods ended up using the flag on non-character entities, and after Oxid reworked the Pathfinder, the flag started to cause crashes. Oxid fixed it, but he changed my special logic to consider the entire bounding box again instead of the entity position, which made feeling of player movement worse. Okay. This time I decided to solve it by adding an optional parameter to the collision functions instead of yet another flag that would indicate that the collision is being calculated for player-controlled entity to determine the old behavior should be used or not. And that's how bugs introduced. Remember the landfill bug with the correction creating water under the player. A fix for that was to add a piece of code to build terrain that would check that the player was building tiles and not colliding with water. If they do, just place the ground underneath them to correct the result. So, but that happens no matter where the character is. If you assume it's underneath it, it works. But if the character's not there and you have a 10 tile reach, you could do this, right? I get it. Special player collision logic allows characters to get close to the water that is bounding box collides with water. When I add the extra parameter collision functions, I didn't adjust this code. So it was using consider entire bounding box collision behavior and falsely detected the character entity as colliding with tiles. Try to save the character by placing ground under its feet. Right. So that prevents you from getting stuck or maybe dying. I don't know. And there's your landfill bug. This is how you should. I think you should shut off these types of things if your PC is having issues. It doesn't look very good, but you can get some good performance out of your Factorio base and some accurate placement of what blocks are free and which ones are not. Yeah, I bet you this will have an effect on deleted walls. It's good. That's a good call. So here comes Revelation. The big confession: when the first post reporting the bug came in, I immediately knew what the problem was. It wasn't the first time I'd seen it. The same issue happened to me when I was making special player collision logic the first time around. Back then, I caught it and fixed it even before the entire tile transition rework was merged to the main code base, but I didn't make a test. I did not make a test. And that's how the bug happens. The short version would have been something like the bug was a result of long-forgotten pieces of code. They're supposed to solve edge case problems that were usually created by solutions to other edge case problems, interacting in an unintended way after changes that were made to solve yet another edge case problem. Right. In Czech, we have the saying, for which I've not found an English equivalent: "He who does nothing breaks nothing." That's pretty much it. It's kind of reassurance when something unintentionally breaks during activity, resulting in inconvenience. The only way to make certainty that nothing would have broken would be to do nothing. And at times, the proverb sounds like advice. If I can't figure out all the problems as a new feature, change, or bug fix will cause, just a number of potential issues that we'll need to solve to do the change seems overwhelming. Doing nothing starts to feel like an option with the best possible outcome. But that's analysis paralysis creeping in. That's true. And what I need to do is to remind myself in the intended meaning of the proverb and stop worrying about potential problems that may not even be real in the end. And if they are, they will just be inconveniences that will eventually be solved too. This is great. That's so true. You can be completely safe. Just don't do anything. Don't do anything with your life. It's a good proverb for your life too. There's something about something about attempting to do good. You're always going to make enemies. He who has no enemies doesn't have an interesting life. Something like that from Churchill, I want to say. I have a 60% confidence that Churchill said something similar about show me a man with no enemies and I'll show you someone who's done nothing with his life. Something like that. I don't remember it offhand. That's true. Good job, Priscilla, and good job explaining this and thinking and helping us to think through it as well. It's a lot of work, and by the way, this FFF they absolutely don't have to do this. Their minimum, I guess their minimum requirement is to post something that says bug resolved, next version, and that's all they have to say. Right, and we would go, okay, They absolutely do not have to post all this. This is great. So much appreciated. All right, character and vehicle movement effects from cloning. This week we're happy to show the latest in visual effects that Dom has been working on. Carrying on the topic of improving the way terrain and environment feels and reacts to the player, Dom and Priscilla spent quite some time working on movement effects for the character and vehicles. As you walk around on certain terrains, the character will kick up some dust and dirt. Oh, how about that? I'd like to see it in slower motion, or be able to have a slider bar on this GIF. Let's see if is it different on grass, on super green, dark grass, light green grass, brown, and desert. Interesting. The effect actually makes a really big difference how it feels to walk around, which the GIF might not show that well. Well, no. I mean, there's only a limited supply of gifts. You have to buy a template, and then you have to you spend maybe 6 hours making a GIF, and then you got to submit it to government approval, and then you got to take it to the store and have the GIF developed. You give it to a GIF roll, and they give you back some GIF pictures, and then you have to upload that. No, you just record a new one. The effect actually makes, some exoskeletons equipped. You may feel like you're zooming around the place. Walking around will also leave some subtle footprints on the ground, with help connect the character to the terrain. Oh, I didn't see the footprints. Oh, yeah, little subtle footprints. There's a tank. The vehicles also kick up some dust as you drive around. This feature is not as simple as it was seen from the result, and there are quite a few new features under the hood to make it possible. He who does nothing breaks nothing. Yeah, so you can kind of see the dust separate as a car drives through it. Little light trail behind it, dark in the middle and light on the side. Now, this GIF may not show it, but Liz, trust me, on the thing that we're trying to show you, there's way better GIFs out there, but we chose this shitty one. Oh, man. All right, thank you very much for being here. If you like this sort of thing, make sure you get that like and subscribe. If you have a question or comment, leave in the footer below. And if any of the links for any of the things to support me or this FFF are in the description below. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.